The first thing you need to do when entering the apartment is to walk around and check for any issues, anything that's dirty, and especially make sure you take detailed before photos. So follow me into the bathroom and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to inspect the entire room, top to bottom, that includes the ceiling and the floors, and make sure I get photos. And so, of course, I start with the top. I'm making sure the lights still work. These are things that I can report to maintenance, even though I may not be cleaning them. And then I can work my way around the walls. I'll do 360 photos all the way across, making sure I get photos of all the walls, and again with the floors. And then I'll move on to the bathtub, the shower, the toilet, and so on. So making sure I get a picture of the bathtub, regardless of whether it looks clean or not. This just helps ensure that everyone knows exactly the condition of the apartment before you even start cleaning. And I'll make sure I get pictures of things like the shower head in case it needs cleaned. You can even get pictures on the top of the shower stall because that's something that you'll need to clean as well. And pictures of places like the toilet. You can get the inside of the toilet, underneath the lid, and so on. Making sure that you get pictures of every single step, every single thing that you might be cleaning. I don't really think you can have too many pictures, so don't be afraid to keep going and take as many pictures as you need because it will be a really big help for everybody later. And so you can continue, of course, with the counter, with the sink, with all of the drawers, and so on. When you first start cleaning the apartment, you want to start in the back or the furthest away from the front door. That way, when you're cleaning and you walk through, you're not accidentally walking over a space that you've already cleaned. I usually like to start in the bedrooms because typically they're in the very back of the apartment or the furthest away from the front door. When sweeping out a balcony or a porch, especially if you are on an upper level, you'll want to use something like a dustpan to catch any debris that is not natural, like leaves or dust. And that also helps it keep it from sweeping onto another person's balcony. So when you're sweeping, again, it's the same rule that you follow for anything else. Make sure you're sweeping out all of the corners. Right now we just have a lot of leaves, and that's just typical debris, so I'm just going to sweep that out and away. It's also a good thing to use a dustpan for these too, especially if you've got a lot. But as you can see, I'm just getting all the corners and sweeping out there, and you would continue to follow this pattern all the way. Start from the very back to the very edge. That'll keep you from working on any spaces or stepping through any dust that you might have already done. And then the other thing that you need to do is check any outdoor storage. Make sure that the tenant hasn't left any storage behind, any of their personal items. And the same thing applies. Make sure that you are sweeping out the outdoor storage space as well. We're just going to get a leaf out, and you can add that to the rest of your pile. When starting in any space, you want to make sure that you're going from the top down. There are several reasons for that. When you get in the habit of this, it's easier to keep yourself from forgetting a space that you need to clean, and also that keeps you from having to re-clean yet again, because if you're working from the bottom up and you clean something like the baseboards, but then you wipe all this dust off and it hits the baseboards or the door frames again, that means you have to clean all over again. So when you work from the top down, you're not dealing with dust upon dust upon dust. You clean the one space, and then that falls to the next level, you clean that space, and then that's clean, and so on and so forth. So the first thing that I like to clean in most of the rooms, they have these vents. Sometimes they're on the very top of the ceiling, sometimes they're on the side up by the ceiling like this. And once again, you get your rag, it just needs to be damp, and you can use some cleaning product and wipe down both the vents themselves. Sometimes you might need to take your finger and wrap the rag around it and get inside the inlets of these as much as you can. And just make sure that you're getting all these little spaces. Sometimes they'll look pretty clean and you won't have to do as much work. And then as you can see, there's a lot of dust and dirt that's piled along the edges. take another clean portion of your rag and make sure you're wiping all of that dust and dirt off as well. Go around every edge. You can't really be too thorough. If you're ever unsure, just clean it. And if you see any issues like this, before you start cleaning, especially if you forgot to take the picture earlier in your work, make sure you get another picture before you start cleaning so that there's evidence not only of what you've done, so that way we can let the tenant know and then charge them for anything that might be necessary. That's extra work that they should have cleaned before they moved out. Another high space that you need to clean are the shelves. Sometimes they'll be nice and clean. You can just give them a quick wipe down, either with a microfiber cloth or a dry cloth, but sometimes there's some extra dust and particles left around. So make sure you're checking the tops of all of the shelves and go from every corner and wipe down. I like to just do kind of a zigzag pattern and work my way down. Of course, you see I'm not hitting the edges because this is a long video or a long shelf, but that is important to make sure you're getting to the very edges and cleaning all of that off. There might be some dents and dings, again, like we talked about before, or we will talk about in some other clips, but if there's any dirt, of course, that's the thing that you need to focus on. Any stains. If there's hard stains or if there's little scuffs and paint stains, once again, maintenance can take care of those. But any dirt stains that you can get off, make sure you're scrubbing a little bit and seeing if you can get those off. With the top-down method, the next place you want to start after cleaning the shelves would be the doors and the door frames. So for instance, this door here, I like to check and make sure all of these little inlets and these beveled areas are clean. You can just use a simple rag. I get some cotton ones from something like the dollar store or Walmart, and then a cleaning product. Be careful which ones you get, but if you need something with a little bit of extra sanitizing power, you can use something like Ajax, or you can use something like Barkeeper's Friend. I put a little bit of product, you don't need too much, onto my cloth, and then I take this cloth and I run it along the outlets. All you need is your rag to be just slightly damp. If you get it too wet, you're going to have dripping down your door. And if it's too dry, it will take off all of that dust, but it may not fully clean the door itself. And of course, you just want to make sure that you're not seeing any more stains, any more dust. It's a pretty simple task. You can go from each beveled area. Most of the time, this is the only space that you need to worry about. But of course, if you need to clean any of the stains or anything off the door, you can continue around the bevel. A lot of the times, these door handles and the edges of the door will be very dirty from the way we touch them. So make sure you get around those too. And then of course, you can sanitize the doorknob as well. Make sure you get both sides. For some bedrooms, you might find a sliding door and blinds like this. This particular apartment does have those. Or you might find a regular window, and we will talk about both. For right now, we'll talk about this door and these particular blinds. It applies with the regular slat blinds as well, but just check them over, make sure there's no stains. If there is a small stain, take a microfiber cloth. A lot of the time, you might just need water and a tiny bit of product, but the microfiber cloth helps from getting more dust or fibers on the blinds, so that's why I like to use them for this. And you just take that spot and softly scrub it. And hopefully, at this point, there won't be anything that's left behind. Obviously, if you're seeing big issues, don't forget to report that to maintenance and to the office, and they will make sure that it is taken care of. Walls can be important too. However, if there's any large stains on the walls that you can't remove without just a little bit of scrubbing, you can leave those for maintenance and they can take care of those. If it's something like this, where you might see a small dent, that's another thing that maintenance will take care of, but you can always take a picture and report that in so maintenance knows to take care of that. Then there are these little stains like this. Sometimes you can get them off, sometimes you can't. You can use the same rag that you've been using. That one removed quite easily. So that's something that you can take care of. It helps save a little bit of time for the maintenance. But this one here is actually a scuff. And as you can see, my cloth isn't getting that off. That's one you can leave for maintenance to take care of. Something that is often missed, but can be very important, especially to make sure that the apartment looks really fresh and clean, is to clean off the baseboards. You can take a broom to them first to get all the dust off if you like, but I just like to use my cloth again, make sure that it's completely rinsed out and it's got some more cleaning product on it. And again, I'm going to make sure that my cloth is butted right up against the edge and go slowly. You can kind of make a back and forth motion, scrub a little bit if you need to, because sometimes these are really dirty, but just make sure I get all of that dust, anything that might be stuck on there, any drips or anything, and completely clean it until it looks nice and fresh and clean. You may have different types of blinds depending on which unit or apartment that you are cleaning, but most of them will be slat blinds like this. The best thing that you can do is to gently and firmly push them against the window, and that will help with two things. One, that will help keep your blinds from going back and forth and making a lot of noise. And two, that will help you be able to push them apart a little bit with your hands. And while you're firmly holding them, you can clean the entire portion of the blinds without them overlapping each other, and you can see where you're working. Now the best place to start, like we keep talking about, are corners. So I like to start in the top corner, and I'll work section by section, just following these little cord lines. So I'll start with this section and go through in one space, and then the next section and go through that space. Now to keep everything from getting too dusty again, and to help pick up the dust, I like to use a microfiber cloth. If you really are just dusting off, you don't have to dampen this cloth or use any product, but if you've got a lot of dust and dirt, I recommend once again using a cleaning product on this, as well as getting it damp or wet and cleaning off like so. But once again, I'll work from that top corner all the way down and then just continue to work through sections until the blinds are completely clean. With the window tracks, there are a few things that you need to remember. You can check all of these little inlets and insets here, but with the window track itself, make sure all the little bugs are out. You can use a tiny little hand vac to vacuum all of those out if you need to. And then I just take my basic rag. You can use a paper towel to whatever you need to clean. And like you will see me use a lot, I'll take a little finger if I need to. You can also get tiny little brushes that clean window tracks, but honestly, most of the time a regular cloth works just great. And I get my finger deep into that space and just work my way down and make sure all of that track is clean as much as you can get it on either side. Get all of the dust out, any of the debris. Make sure these little edges are clean. And then if the inside of the window is pretty bad too, this has a special lock on it, so we just need to open that up. And of course this will get dusty and dirty too. If it's light, then it's not too bad. You don't need to worry too much about making this portion perfect, but it's always a nice thing to go through and clean. I've cleaned that space off, and then I could use a little hand vac, or I could even use a paper towel to just scoop all these little guys up and clean them out and take them out of the frame, and then you are all done. In some circumstances, like here in this bathroom, you might see some light fixtures that need to be dusted. So once again, you can take your microfiber cloth that keeps a lot of the dust from resettling and wipe around the tops. And sometimes the bulbs get pretty dusty too, so you can wipe down the bulbs as well. Be careful not to get too much product, anything wet, or your fingers on the bulbs, because that can damage them as well. So just a clean microfiber cloth will clean that off, just like that. Here's another time where it's important to do top down. So this is a space that gets missed often by tenants and sometimes even by us cleaners. It's a good thing to have on your checklist to remember to do, but you want to start at the top of the shower stall. And all of this is generally covered with some dust and dirt. It happens just from living in spaces. Take your washcloth, and it's very similar to what you did with the baseboards. Get your finger right up along the edge and scrub all the way around, making sure to get any of that dust and that dirt off. Sometimes these get really bad. You might need to wash or rinse out your cloth, grab a clean cloth, a new one, but make sure you're getting all of that space all the way around your shower stall. Your shower head is important too. This one looks pretty decently clean. We're just going to kind of make sure some of the dust is off, and you can see a little bit of hard water stains. So like we talked about with sinks, this applies to bathroom or kitchen sinks. You're going to get a little bit of that product on your sponge or on your cloth, preferably a sponge again. Scrub Daddies are still my favorite. And then lightly scrub all of that hard water off. Sometimes they get stuck in these little holes. It's hard to completely get it out, but as much as you can, gently kind of massage and work some of that hard water out, so that way you're left with a clean, working shower head. Continuing with the top down, like we talked about with fixtures, you can use your Scrub Daddy and some product that will get off hard water stains or some of the mess left behind. Scrub all of that all around the edges, all around the handles, and so forth. I'm just doing a light scrubbing here. This doesn't need a lot done to it, but sometimes you'll get some of these bathtubs that need a lot of scrubbing. Do whatever needs to be done to get them looking fresh and clean and as brand new as possible. All the way around the edges, the little pieces. Some of this down here. Again, we're working from the top down. And then after your fixtures, you can rinse out this tool, use it to clean all the way down into where you can see there's a little bit of hard water on here. Scrub this portion. And then we'll scrub as much of that off as we can get. Sometimes, once again, it's difficult. It might pop up and show up again. Once everything gets dry, give it another shot. If it still shows up after it's dry, a lot of scrubbing. As flush as you can get this will help you get a lot of that off. And we're getting all around this rim along here too, inside the actual tub portion. Sometimes you need the Scrub Daddy to get in there. Clean this as best as possible. Get that as fresh and clean as you can. And then rinse. For cleaning the tub, I like to use another disinfectant product. Sometimes you might need to still use something like Barkeeper's Friend to get some of those really rough stains off that just don't seem to come off the porcelain quite the same way. But you'll still want a disinfectant to really clean the product thoroughly. So once again, I'm using Ajax. You can use Comet. You can sprinkle a little bit on the areas that you need clean. Like up here, sometimes these get really dirty. Or down here into the actual portion of the tub that people sit in. Don't forget to get the walls as well. Sometimes these walls will also be covered with hard water. You can either use the BioClean to get some of that off and the Scrub Daddy, but sometimes it also just comes off with a clean product like Ajax. And make sure you're scrubbing all these surfaces. Most of the time, like these walls don't look too bad. There's not that much hard water, but again, if you need to, go all the way up and scrub these walls, get off all of the hard water. Sometimes they could just use with a good wipe down anyway. And again, work down, all the way down, making sure you get all the walls, and then you can work at the very end, scrubbing these inner corners, all this stuff, and scrubbing the bottom of the tub. Now, the last piece of advice that I want to give you is to keep a cup handy. I like to just stick this on top of maybe my Ajax bottle or whatever. It'll just sit on top because it comes really handy when you are cleaning these tubs and you want to fully rinse everything out. You might notice that as you're trying to rinse out the tub, everything kind of starts to kick back toward the back of the tub. So I use my cup to push that product back down and out of the tub instead of using the faucet itself. This cup also is very helpful for rinsing off your walls. If you put it right up against the edge of the wall, you'll see how it drips down. It pushes a lot of that product off, and that water will continue to run off and clean all of these spaces that the faucet can't reach and that your cloth may not be able to fully rinse off. So a cup is a really nice thing to have on hand for those odd surfaces where you need to rinse the product down the drain. For the inside of toilet bowls, a lot of the times you'll see these rings that are very hard to remove. Again, make sure you're using one product for the toilet bowl that you're not using anywhere else. I like to use a pumice stick. This is the brand that I use. These are pretty cheap. You can find them at Walmart. And this is just a brand new one, as you can see. You can get it a little wet in the sink, or you can start scrubbing right away. Generally, these toilets sometimes are already a little bit wet. Sometimes you can also just use the water from the bowl. And it's going to get pretty loud, but you're going to want to scrub pretty hard. You'll watch me do this here. Luckily, this time it's not too loud. But as you can see, this pumice stick is removing that hard water stain and whatever might be left behind, that ring, with the pumice stone. This is where you might need a lot of elbow grease and a lot of cleaning. Sometimes, in order to make sure you've gotten the ring, you'll need to flush the toilet a couple times, clean out your mess that's left behind by the pumice stone, just to make sure you've fully gotten that ring. But continue scrubbing, and eventually that ring will be removed. I'm going to flush the toilet and show you our work. And now you can see here, most of that ring is gone. I've cleaned off some of the pumice stone and I can see the spots I've missed. Continue doing that around the edges. And sometimes you'll notice there's a little bit, in this particular case, this toilet is pretty clean, but you'll notice some drips along the inner edges here. Same thing, you can run that pumice stone along those edges and clean up anything that might be left along there. And again, run the toilet one more time to make sure it's totally clean. So now you can see all that space that I scrubbed. Little spots here again that I've missed, but most of that is clean. Keep working until that stain is completely gone. Toilets are very important. In fact, they're one of the most important things you can clean in an apartment. So when cleaning the toilet, you can use Lysol wipes, or you can use a cloth. However, make sure whatever cloth you're using is quarantined and you only use it for the toilet. This might be pretty self-explanatory, but just to be clear, whatever products that you're using for the toilet, only use them for the toilet. So as you can see here, I've got a different rag than I've used anywhere else, and this rag I will only be using for the toilet. I will then keep it quarantined from the rest of my products after I've been using it for the toilet and after I'm done cleaning the toilet. But you'll take, again, you'll want something with a disinfectant in it. So Barkeeper's Friend doesn't have a disinfectant in it. This time I'm going to use Ajax. You can use Comet. Anything that's going to have either some bleach or some disinfectant is a great product to use. I typically use Lysol wipes, but in this instance, we're going to use the Ajax. I'm going to put some of that product on my cloth, and then you want to make sure that you're scrubbing the entire toilet. This is another instance where I do like to work top to bottom yet again. So I will start with the top and make sure I'm getting all the dust off the top of the bowl. Work down, clean any of the sides, any of the dust that might be on the sides of the bowl, clean the handle, all the way down. Sometimes this space will get really, really dirty. Make sure you're getting in all the edges. Sometimes this can be kind of a difficult area to get as well. If you need to lift up the lid to kind of get under there a little bit. And sometimes these will pop off as well. You can pop them off and get underneath. And the same thing, working along all the edges. You might need to wash out your cloth in the sink and reapply some product as you go. But for this instance, I'm just showing you what needs to be cleaned. Make sure you're getting the top of the lid, which I didn't show in the video, but do make sure you get, and the inside, underneath the lid, all along the seat. And then this is especially important, underneath the seat, get in all those little crevices, clean as much of this off as you possibly can. You might have to scrub just a tiny bit. This is also where Lysol wipes come in really handy because you can use one per space that you're cleaning, each portion of the toilet, all around the porcelain. And then that does include all along the sides, all along these rims and this bottom here, and all along the front. Sometimes you will see some drips and things on the front. It's not fun, but that's why I wear gloves. And you can of course wash your gloves. You can get one-time use gloves, disposable. I like to use something a little heavier duty because sometimes the thinner gloves will get poked through, but this is for your safety. This is for your hygiene, for all of those things. Gloves are very important, especially when cleaning something like this. And then make sure you wash your gloves as well thoroughly with hot water and soap or your Ajax before you move on to another project. Or alternatively, of course, you can have 2 sets of gloves to clean each of these spaces. So we're going all around the edges, all the way down, and just making sure you get that totally clean. Like so. And now I will show you how to clean the inside of the bowl. When in the bathroom, you'll encounter a lot of things on the sink or in the sink or in the tub or on the tub, especially on the fixtures. Like you can see in this sink here, there's a little bit of hard water buildup, and sometimes that's hard to get off with just a regular cloth. So I like to use something a little bit more abrasive, and you want to start off soft and then you can work up in pressure. That helps avoid from scratching off any paint that you might see. And of course, if you notice that you're starting to scratch off paint, stop immediately, and then you can put in your notes that you may not have been able to get off that stain. But of course, we want to make sure that we're causing no damage or as little as humanly possible. And once again, if you notice that you're starting to create any damage, that's when you need to stop immediately and put it in your notes. But for this particular sink, there's a couple things that I like to use. You can either use these green scour pads. They're a little bit cheaper. My favorite product is the Scrub Daddy, but you can use Scrub Daddy as well. Something that's going to have a little more abrasiveness to it than just a simple cloth. And then my favorite product to use for hard water stains is this hard water stain remover. It's just called BioClean. It's spelled exactly like it sounds. No funky spelling with this. I take a little bit of this product. I'll put it on my Scrub Daddy or on my rag. You can also put it directly on the surface. And sometimes I know it's a little bit hard to get this product out. You don't need a lot to start. That's about all I use. I will get my Scrub Daddy wet that product a little bit, and then just start scrubbing. I like to use circular motions because all the different angles help scrub that off quite a bit better. Sometimes you need to push these down, or there might be a little tool to help lock the sink so that stays down in place, and then you can get around the edges a little bit better. And scrub, and then to double check your work, we're going to pop that open again. We're going to rinse it clean, and ideally let it dry. Sometimes these stains will reappear once the surface is dry, and if that's the case, try it one more time, maybe with a little bit more pressure, see if you can get the stain off. If you can't, go ahead and make a note of that as well. But sometimes these little white stains, especially the water stains and the hard water, can be kind of tricky and will reappear after the surface is dry. So make sure you're checking that, and hopefully once this dries, it will be nice and black and smooth and clean again. And the same thing applies to the rest of the fixtures, making sure that you're getting all of the fixtures. There's a little bit of hard water on this edge. Again, I'm just going to scrub and see if I can get some of that off. Sometimes just the abrasiveness alone will help kind of like scuff it off. And this sink looks pretty clean, so if that's the case, I can take this and just do a light run over the top of it and just make sure I'm getting any extra dust that might be on there. Or, like we've used before, a regular cloth or a microfiber cloth and run over that too. Make sure that you're getting the undersides, back behind the handles, all around these edges. Again, you want to be as thorough as possible because, of course, when you move in, you want your place to look as nice and new and fresh as possible. And so you would want to do for someone else what you would want to have when you move in. And of course, sometimes we're all a little bit lenient, but better is always better. So cleaner, the fresher, the more thorough you can be is always better. So as you can see, this portion of the sink is now clean, but now I've left my cleaning product in here. Sometimes that happens and you just, no matter how many times you try to rinse it out, it won't all get out, but try to do as best a job as you can about being thorough and cleaning up after yourself. So now that this portion of the sink is clean and the rest of the sink is clean, I'm gonna try and rinse out all of these little pieces that I've left behind. So sometimes I can just take my hand and run it underneath. I can take my microfiber cloth and make sure I just get all those little pieces out. So here I am just making sure I get all those pieces out. You can use a paper towel sometimes as well. I'm just kind of cleaning it up so it still looks nice. Even though that was just cleaning product that was left over, it gives the sink still a clean, fresh, brand new appeal. With sinks and surfaces in the bathroom or kitchen, make sure that you are going along any of the edges that you might see. Again, we're just going in with a regular cleaner and your damp cloth and wiping along any of these edges. Once again, just butting right up against the edge, making sure you're getting all the dust and dirt off. And then making sure that you're wiping down and cleaning. If there's any stains that are stuck on, scrubbing them a little bit harder. If you need to pull out something harder like a scrubber, Scrub Daddy, you can do that. And wiping down the entire surface of the sinks and the counters. When cleaning cupboards and drawers, don't forget about the sides if there are any. Just if you need to, you can do a quick wipe down, or if there's a few things you need to scrub off, scrub those off really quickly. But again, don't forget about the sides because sometimes those can get dirty as well. And then you can move on to the drawers and the cupboards. Make sure you get the tops. Those get kind of dirty, they get kind of dusty. If there's anything that's stuck on the fronts, try and get that off as best you can. Here we have a matte gray surface, so I'm not going to use anything that is really abrasive because I don't want to scrub off that matte gray surface. But I'm going to use my cloth as best I can to kind of scrub any stains or anything that I see on the front of this off. Make sure you're cleaning any dust, debris, oils off of the handles. And then inside the drawers. I'm using a cloth for this particular portion, and luckily there's not much in this drawer. But if you notice there's a lot of hair, sometimes the best thing that you can do is use a wet paper towel and run that over, getting along the edges, pick it all up in one movement, and then clean it out. And then you can either rinse out your cloth, sometimes it doesn't all come out, and that's why I say use a paper towel. You can throw the paper towel away, get a fresh one. But rinse out your cloth of any of that hair that was stuck, and then go back in and clean the rest of the surface. But the best thing you can do is one sweeping motion and literally try and scoop up any of the dust or the hair that you catch in your cloth and then rinse that out. Make sure you get all the corners of the drawer and leave it as clean as you possibly can. With cupboards, you might find that you have some shelves. You can sometimes pull out the shelves and clean them. I won't do that here, but you can see that this does slide out. And if you have a sink large enough, sometimes that helps. You can rinse it out in the actual sink, or you can pull it out, set it on your countertop, and give it a better scrub than trying to sneak into the cupboards and scrub that all out. However, if you find you don't need to remove it, that's always best. It keeps you from damaging anything. It makes your job easier trying to pull that out. And if you have to, of course, do what you need to do. Just be careful. Make sure that you're taking soft, slow, smooth movements. But when you get into this, you can clean out your space. You can pull it out a little bit if you need to. Again, going from corner to corner and that zigzag motion is the best way to clean that all out. Same thing with the bottom shelf, corner to corner, cleaning it all out. Alternatively, you can do the same corner to corner thing like this. This is a great motion to keep everything from going back into your cupboard. And just making sure you're wiping that down all the way across. Sometimes you have to get up on the edges. Sometimes you might have to go on the insides of your doors, but for the most part, you want to make sure those surfaces are clean. When cleaning the washing machine and dryer, there are a few things you need to look for and clean. First of all, I'm going to open this dryer, make sure that there's not an excessive amount of dust around this border. If there is, you just take your cloth and wipe as much of that out as you can. And then check the lint trap, make sure there's no extra lint in here. In this case, there is some lint. So we're just going to clean all of that out and throw that away. And then just do a double check inside the dryer and make sure that there's no serious stains, no leftover clothing, and then if there's any damage or anything, make sure that you report that as well. But other than that, you can just give it a once over and then clean any spots, give it a little wipe down, and you are good to go. And then for the for the washing machine, you'll want to make sure the top is clean, not just a simple wipe down. And then inside the washing machine, you'll want to check this little spot where generally the bleach will go. Sometimes this can be very, very linty, dirty, dusty, or still full of product. So you just take your rag, take one of your little fingers, put it in the rag, and then just get deep and down into all those corners as much as you can. Clean all of that out, clean around the base. And then all around this area of the door sometimes can get really dusty and dirty. So once again, just make sure you're wiping all of that down, getting all the little corners. Make sure there's nothing in the rubber gasket here or anything that gets stuck. Make sure there's nothing left in the drum, that the drum is clean. And then this nifty little trick, most of the time you can pull these out. We're gonna try and pull this out right now. Just like that. And as you can see, this has a lot of cleaning products still left in it. So you can take this straight out and take it over to the sink. And especially if the sink has a sprayer, that's really helpful to get all of that gunk out. Clean all of this out, wipe it down, and then you can just pop it right back in to the machine. Living rooms are pretty straightforward. They'll follow a lot of the same rules as a bedroom would. Make sure you're cleaning off any easy to remove stains on the walls, marking or noticing any holes that might be in the walls or any damage so that the maintenance guys can come in and repair those, or anything that you might need to report to your coordinator. Make sure you're cleaning up all the baseboards just like you clean in the bedrooms. And then depending on your living room, it might be carpeted, so pick up any large debris that the carpet cleaners wouldn't be able to take care of, or anything that would keep them from being able to vacuum and clean the carpets. If you have the hardwood though, same thing applies as to any other space that might be a hardwood or a laminate floor. Make sure that you are sweeping and mopping. And if it is genuine hardwood, luckily these are just a faux wood, so you can use basic cleaning products on those. But if you come to a unit that has real hardwood, make sure you're using a product that's specifically made for wood, as wood can be easily damaged by some of the cleaners that we use. So once again, if you have any questions, always ask your coordinator first. The more that you do this, the more you'll be able to remember or understand which products to use for which places. But in this one, we can just do a simple sweep, and a normal mop, you can use a Swiffer mop, or you can use, like there's a Bona is another brand that you can use to clean, or just a regular rain out mop works just great too. Make sure that you're getting the windows and the blinds just like you would if there are any windows or blinds on doors like this. Make sure that you're cleaning them just like you would clean a bedroom. And that should be it. You should be set from there. Some units may not have backsplash, but if they do, make sure to check it over. Make sure that there's especially no oils or grease or anything that's gotten behind the oven or range area. And just make sure, once again, that you're either wiping it down, or if there's some really tough spots, you can take a scrubber and some cleaning product and make sure that all of the dust and food debris and oils and grease are all off of the backsplash. The fridge and freezer can often be a big task. One of the first things you probably want to do is to pull out the fridge, check and make sure there's no debris underneath it or behind it. Sweep all of that and mop it if you have to. Clean up everything behind the fridge. And then when you push it back, make sure that there's nothing that got stuck to the bottom of the fridge and now is left in your space. Make sure you sweep all of that up. And then for the fridge, you want to make sure all the dust is off the top of the fridge. Inside the freezer, you'll want to check, like you can see, this one has quite a bit of mess in it. And the best thing that you can do to help you clean this, besides just using a rag with some hot water, is the first thing you can do when you get inside an apartment, you can come down here and you can see this has a switch. Luckily this one is already off, but sometimes this still might be left on, and that's, as you can hear, what keeps the fridge and freezer cold. So when you turn that off, it turns off the motor to keep the fridge and freezer cold, and that will help the fridge and freezer acclimate. You can even leave the freezer door open if you need to. You can clean a few other things, come back to the fridge, and then when this has warmed up a little bit or defrosted, it will make your job a lot easier when you come along to clean all of these spaces. With the freezer, again, it's the same idea as everything else. You'll hear me say this 100 times in this video. Start in the back, start in the corner, and work your way to the front. Just kind of scoop up as much of that product as you can. And then with the door, sometimes you can gently pop off these door pieces. This one I'm not going to mess around with, I don't want to break it. But that will sometimes help you clean off these shelves a little bit better. Other than that, we're just going to clean off any stains that we see on the back, inside the door, on the shelving, even on these pieces. Sometimes they get dirty. Just make sure you clean all of that off. You can use some Ajax, some sort of cleaning product, whatever you prefer that has a nice cleaning agent in it. You can clean all of that off. And then when you're done with the freezer, once again, we're working from the top down. We've talked about that a little bit. Or when you're working with the fridge, you can pull all of these shelves out if you need to. Take them over to the sink, rinse or clean them out. Same thing with the drawers. These drawers will generally slide out. And of course, in the video, there we go. And this one luckily isn't very dirty, but once again, you can take this, rinse it out in the sink with some warm water. I do want to make a note that you want to be careful. Oftentimes, this glass is tempered glass, which is very helpful for when it gets very hot or very cold, but not quickly. So if you're going to take these out and wash them out in the sink, make sure that the glass isn't too cold, because if you immediately put hot water on it, it can crack it or break it or shatter it. So go very slowly when you're heating them back up or putting them back in the fridge. Of course, we've got this fridge turned off. You want to make sure they acclimate just a little bit so it's not a shock to the glass and then it doesn't break it. The other thing that you want to check when you're cleaning, now this fridge looks really clean, but there's a chance that behind or underneath this piece here, it could still be dirty. So you can gently pull this out. Luckily, there's nothing left behind in this fridge, but sometimes you'll find that there's a lot of food debris still left here because the store hasn't been pulled out. And so make sure you pull this whole piece out, clean out behind there, and it will also help you clean the very bottom of the fridge underneath these drawers. So wipe all that down. Sometimes this will get covered, sauces and things will drip here. Clean all of that. Again, cleaning all of your doors. And then, same thing, wipe down your front of your fridge and your freezer doors. You might have something like this where it is a stainless steel product. So I recommend getting something like this. It's just a basic stainless steel cleaner. This will help with any smudges. Luckily, this door set looks beautiful, but you can use something like this in either a microfiber cloth or a paper towel, whichever works best for you. And you want to go with the grain, so you can see the grain is running this direction. You just need a little bit of product. So start out really small. If you end up needing a little bit more, go ahead and use it. But a lot or a little goes a long way. And then spray a little bit on your cloth, or you can spray it directly on the doors. And again, corner to corner, you'll just go slowly back and forth, up and down, as little as possible to go up and down, because you can kind of see that's not running with the grain. But if you follow that zigzag pattern and just go side to side, you should be able to get the whole thing clean. With these stainless steel doors, if there's still a lot of gunk and debris stuck on the doors themselves, you can go through with a regular cleaning cloth and clean all of that off first, and then go through and polish the stainless steel. Microwaves can be pretty simple but pretty dirty. The best trick that I know is, in this case, once again, this microwave is pretty clean. It's got something left behind from a tenant, so you can pull that out. But my 2 tips for microwaves is if this were to be pretty dirty and covered in food, especially stinks when it's on the very top of the microwave, you can take a mug and put some water in it and run the mug for a minute or 2, and that will heat up and soften all the product that's all over the microwave. You pull out the mug and then you should be easily, ideally, able to wipe down all of the surfaces and clean them very simply. Also, this plate pulls right out. You can take this over. Again, this is tempered glass, so just make sure when you put it in the water, it should be fine. This is not necessarily as sensitive as something that you would find in the fridge, but be careful when running it straight into hot water. And just rinse it off, clean it off however you need, dry it off, and then you can stick it right back in the microwave. Make sure that you wipe off the top of the microwave, the outside of the microwave, and of course if you've got stainless steel, use a stainless steel cleaner to wipe off the outside of the microwave as well. When cleaning the dishwasher, there's a few things to look for. I'm going to open this up and check to see if there's any serious hard water stains on the inside or any food debris that's left. You can see I can just pull this rack right out and place it aside, and then check to see if there's any like food stains, anything like that, any particles left behind. You can use, like I like to use a Scrub Daddy on this portion. You can use a cleaner to get off any hard water stains. Check the door, and one of the most important places to check around the door is generally around this seal. Sometimes there'll be a rubber gasket or a piece along this. You want to make sure that gets cleaned and all around the edges. And then when you're done cleaning the inside, you can start just an empty load. Just run the dishwasher. That'll help rinse out anything else that might be loose or stuck behind. And then, of course, we want to clean the outside with a cleaner. Generally, if it's just your typical dishwasher, you can use your regular cleaning products, your regular rag. This one in particular is a stainless steel front, so we'll want to make sure to use the stainless steel product on this. With the oven, remember you want to work from top down, so in a minute we'll cover the range, but don't forget about this portion here. Sometimes this can get really greasy and covered in food, and oftentimes when you're cleaning off the surface, of course here we have stainless steel, so we'll clean off all the extra debris and then use a stainless steel cleaner. But when you're cleaning off this face here, sometimes, if you're gentle, you can see these knobs pull right off. Of course, don't use any extra force. If they don't seem to be coming off, don't worry about the step, but you can see there's a little bit of extra grease and gunk left behind, so I can take my scrubber and kind of scrub some of that off. Use my Scrub Daddy in this portion. Kind of scrub some of that off, clean off as much as I can. Take my cloth, clean off some of the debris. And then once that's all clean, of course I just cleaned a section, but you can just align the knob again and slowly push it back on. And now it's all clean behind the knobs as well. You can also use that if you need to take these knobs, and if they're just entirely plastic, take them off. You can run them under hot water, clean them in the sink as well. It'll make it easier to clean these. And of course, just stick them right back on. You might find 2 different versions of an oven range. There are the ones where you can pull out the burners, and in that case just be gentle when you pull them out. Clean out around the drip pans. If the drip pans are especially dirty, you can check with your coordinator to see if they need replaced, and if they don't, you can typically put aluminum foil over the top of them or leave them. If you're not sure, of course, just ask your coordinator. And make sure you're cleaning the entire top of the oven range. You can use a simple cleaner like Ajax, maybe some Barkeeper's Friend. One does have bleach in it, one doesn't. One is a disinfectant, this one is not, so just keep that in mind depending on what you need to clean off. You can also use, on both types of ovens, a little straight edge blade like this. But for this particular oven, you can see this is a glass cooktop. So for the most part, you might just have to wipe it down. But if you see that there are some residual spots, like if you come close here, you might see a little bit here. Sometimes it will be better, sometimes it will be worse. You can use a cleaner like this to help clean it off. It's just a little polish. And you don't need very much product at all, but I'll just put a tiny bit on here, hopefully. Oh my goodness, and I've got a little bit of dry, but you only need a tiny bit to start, especially when you don't have a lot on your range. Once again, if you start with a little, you can always add a little bit more, but it's hard to take that back. So I'm just gonna use, keeping my blade parallel, we don't wanna do any corners because that will scratch. Keeping my blade parallel, I'm just gonna gently and in small circles work over that space. And you might notice that your polish starts to get kind of brown or black or dirty. That means it's picking up whatever you put down. And slowly and with, again, small circles, kind of working over that space. You may not be able to perfectly get it off, but hopefully you can remove some of what was left behind. And eventually, you can just kind of scrape that up and clean it. With this space, it looks like I need a little more pressure, so you can always start with lighter pressure and work up. And yep, with that little extra bit of pressure, you can see, now that I scrape all this away, all of that is gone. Just with that little bit of cleaner and a straight edge razor, super simple. You can buy this for just $2 or $3, generally at some place like Walmart. You might be also, you might be able to find this at a hardware store, but I buy mine at Walmart and it only costs $2 or $3 and it comes with a lot of replaceable blades. When cleaning the oven, you might notice that there is a lot or a little bit of product or food debris that has left and dripped down inside the oven. And this one you can see there is a little bit here. Now if it's a big mess, you can use a spray cleaner. You can either use something like Easy Off or an industrial cleaner. We might have some for you that you can use. The best thing that you can do, of course, follow directions on the bottle. With this particular cleaner, it works better with some heat. So if I need to, and if the oven is especially bad when I come into the apartment, I can preheat the oven to 250. Generally, you don't need to go too much higher than that. Let it heat up for a little bit. And while I am waiting for it to heat up, I can clean other products or other places in the apartment or the unit. And so I'll spray a little bit inside of this, just a tiny bit here, just right on top of that product. Turn on the oven to 250, let it preheat. Of course, some of these ovens will beep to let you know, or you can just let it sit for a few minutes. Turn that heat back off, let it cool down enough that it's safe for me to touch, and then I can come in and I can scrub this oven. Now in this particular case, this oven doesn't have a whole lot of stains inside the oven, which is really nice, but either way, I can pull out these racks. And these racks don't look too especially dirty either, but you can take the same products that you're using to clean the bottom of the oven and clean these racks. You can use a Scrub Daddy, or you can use a pumice stone to get some of that off. But in this case, like I mentioned, this is not a terrible stain, and for the most part, I would say at least 90% of the ovens that I clean just require a pumice stone. All you do, once again, lay it flat. And just like that, most of the stain is gone. Most of the time I don't even need that oven cleaning product. I can just use this pumice stone by itself. But you can lay it flat, scrub, you might need a little more elbow grease, it just depends on how bad the stain is. And then once you're done with your pumice stone and it's all clean, you can take your cloth, wipe down all the debris that's left behind, and you're done with the inside. Oven glass is a little bit different than cleaning inside the oven. It's a little more delicate, so you don't want to use a pumice stone on the glass. You could scratch it. What I like to use is my trusty barkeeper's friend. You'll hear me talk about this a lot, of course. And I just put a little bit on the glass like this. And then I can use either a damp cloth if it's not super bad, but sometimes it's still a little bit stuck on there. So my trusty Scrub Daddy. And I just work in small circles around the glass and try and get any of that stuck on material off. You might have to re-wet your Scrub Daddy or reapply some of that barkeeper's friend. As you can see, my Scrub Daddy's not super wet, so I'll use my cloth to get it a little more wet around here, or I can take my scrub daddy to the sink and get a little water in it, whatever works best for you. Pick up a little more of that product. And as you can see, a lot of that grease and oil and baked on food is gone. And then when that is all clean, I can take my cloth or paper towel that's a little bit damp and just follow the corners, wipe it clean. Get off all that extra product, whatever might be left behind. And as you can see, this space that I scrubbed, it's all clean, all of that is off. Now if you need to, you can use the barkeeper's friend on the rest of the door, but the rest of the door is more of that ceramic like inside the oven, so you are safe to use a pumice stone. Just make sure you're not using it on the glass. The other three parts of the oven that you will need to clean are the front of the oven. Now this one is completely glass in the front, so we're going to apply the same things with this glass that we applied with the glass on the inside. You can use barkeeper's friend, you can use a regular cleaning agent, but don't use that pumice stone, it'll scratch on any of the glass. Make sure you're wiping down the handle. You can wipe down the front here if there's anything left on the top here. Make sure you're pulling out the oven, cleaning behind it, cleaning the sides of the oven, and sometimes even the counters themselves, or sorry, I should say the cupboards might need to wipe down as well. And then this is the thing that I always struggle to remember too. So make sure that you're going through your checklist that is on the app in your assignment, checking off everything on your checklist. But this drawer is very important too. Not only the front of it, and this portion here, you can see there's a little of debris or food that could be left behind. Wiping down that, it can sometimes be greasy. But after you've cleaned inside the oven, oftentimes there'll be a lot of stuff, like you can see here, there's some foodstuffs or things that have fallen down into this. So you can either pull out this entire drawer and clean it and dump it into a trash bag, or you can take your cloth and like we do with the drawers in the kitchen and in the bathrooms, make sure you're getting all of that scooped into a corner, like so. Once again, you can dump that into a trash bin, or you can use your cloth to kind of scoop it up, pick it all out. It might take a couple tries. Pick all of that up, and then dump that in the trash can. And then you are all good to go with your oven. Especially in the winters, it's very important to make sure that you are checking the thermostat before you leave and setting it to the appropriate temperature. So in the winters here, which are generally from October to April, you want to make sure that the heat is set to at least 65. We like to leave it at 70 here. You can see that the heat is on, the fan is on auto, and then that the temperature is set at 70 degrees. That will help keep the pipes from freezing and bursting and keep the temperature acclimated inside the apartment. And then the other thing that you need to do is for any faucets, so tubs, bathroom sink faucets, kitchen sink faucets, leave the water on a slight stream. It doesn't have to be too big. A little more than the basic drip is always best. That really helps keep everything running, because a simple drip can still sometimes not let the water flow fast enough or enough to keep the pipes from freezing. So you need that movement. But a simple, very, very light sprinkle or stream is great. And then any cupboard doors that you can leave open underneath the sink, leave those open. Helps the heat get underneath, and you should be set. The very last thing you'll want to clean before you leave is the front of the front door. So we can open this up. Sometimes it'll just be a little dusty. This one's just a little dusty, but sometimes they'll be pretty dirty too. So same thing, you can take your regular rag or just a paper towel, wipe that down. If it's got any like little tiny surfaces, you can just kind of get your rag in there. Now of course I started right in the middle, so I've already broken my own rule, but you can always, and you should always start from the top corner and work your way down. That way you're not missing any spots, and that way you're not dumping any dirt on the spot you've already cleaned. Go through the whole inlet, wipe down the door. If you find any of these 3M hooks, of course, you can go ahead and take those off. If they're difficult to remove or if you have any issues, again, You can ask questions. They'll be easier and easier to remove as we go on, but I'm just simply pulling that off, making sure that I'm cleaning off any debris left behind that. If you've still got some gooey residue left behind, you can use Goo Gone to clean that off, and you can also use the flat scraping razor that we were using on the oven. That will help kind of get some of that gunk and product off as well. Most doors will have a manual master key, but in this case you can see we do have an electronic lock. Those will come with a key fob, and in order to use the key fob, you will take this actual fob portion, hold it up to this blank space you can see right here, right up to it until it's touching. You can see there's a beep with a green light. You wait till that beep goes, and then you should be able to turn the lock either open or shut, and either open the door when it's unlocked or make sure that you turn it and that the door is locked. So I'll show you once again. Hold it straight up. There goes the light and the beep. When the beep is done, you'll hear the click. You can turn the knob and then turn the door handle. It is indeed locked.